Okay, continuing where we left off with Pidyon Haben. The next halacha is basically, okay, we learned who needs to be redeemed and how you redeem them. Well, that we didn't learn yet. But now, to whom are you allowed to redeem the firstborn? Now we know the Torah says, it's one of the Kohanim were given 24, it's called the Chav Daled Matnas Kohuna. The Kohanim were given 24 gifts. Some of the gifts were allowed to be eaten by the women, some things were only for the male. It depends, different things. Sometimes the Torah says, Kol Zocher Yechlana, sometimes the Torah says, any Kohen, the Torah doesn't specify men or women, whatever. So now there's a very interesting question. If you're allowed to redeem a Kohen, a firstborn, with a female Kohen. Let's say a girl is a Bas Kohen, or the wife of a Kohen for that matter, because she can eat Truma, and she can eat all the other gifts that a Kohen can eat. So not all, everything, certain things, you said only the male can eat. So the question is, how does it work by Pidyon Haben? Can you redeem a firstborn with a woman, a female Kohen? So many opinions say you cannot. Some say you could redeem it with a woman, or with Bas Kohen. There's an argument in the Rishonim. So it was a lot of discussion, one yeah, one not, why Pidyon Haben would be different, because over there the Torah says always the expression Aaron or Banov. You have to redeem it to Aaron and his kids. So it doesn't say, Banov means sons. So it implies that it has to be only a male Kohen, not. Something people being approved, Taisus says, in one answer in Taisus says that Rav Kahana redeemed firstborns even though he wasn't a Kohen. And some Mepharshim say no, that Rav Kahana, there were two Rav Kahanas in the Gemara. One was a Kohen, one wasn't a Kohen. So the one that the Gemara says did redeem it because of his wife, who was, whatever, was in fact a Kohen, not his wife. So it's a whole discussion. So what happens, bottom line, you have to redeem a firstborn and there's no Kohen around, only a female Kohen. So halacha is, what?
If the Gemara is not Shomer Shabbos.
One time we're coming to that. Now we're talking about male or female. And we'll see about everything else. So what happens, so therefore it's right like this. You should redeem it with a female, if there's no male Kohen, it's the 31st day, so you have an obligation to do it on that day. So what you could do is, you can do it with a female Kohen without a bracha on a condition. And then, when you find the proper Kohen, a male Kohen, then you'll do it again with the bracha. So the first time you do it with a woman without a bracha, and then you make a condition that if I find a male Kohen, so then, because that's only in the time of need.
So I can a Kohen point, let's say a lady, does he have to go on his behalf to do that?
To Pidyon Haben? No, Pidyon Haben has to be a Kohen. The only question is, could it be a female Kohen?
But he can't send a representative.
No, Kohen can't send a representative. It has to be done with the Kohen himself.
How about if you don't have a Kohen and a Levi can do it?
That's what you just asked. No. The Leviim are great. When Mashiach comes, they're going to become Kohanim. That is all right.
But you're saying if there's no male Kohen and there's a Bas Kohen.
So again, in that case, you could do it without a bracha, with a condition that when you get a real Kohen, a male Kohen, you'll do it right. Now what happens, can you use a Kohen who's not bar mitzvah yet? Can use a kid as a Kohen. So it says, you have to be redeeming the kid, only by a Kohen, Gadol, meaning over bar mitzvah. Some people say, even l'chatchila you could do with a minor Kohen under bar mitzvah. Some people say, you can't do it, even b'diavad you can't do it. So there's three opinions. One opinion says, if you did it with a minor Kohen, it was worthless. One opinion says, you shouldn't, but if you did, it's good. Another opinion says, you could go ahead and do it l'chatchila with a minor Kohen. So therefore, Shasat Chak, again, if there's no other Kohen around, and it's the only one that is able to do it as a minor, so then you should do it with the minor.
Without bracha?
No, with the bracha. Then you could do it even with the bracha. Okay. Now, what type of Kohen should you use? In other words, so preferably it says you should give it to a Talmud Chacham, a Kohen is a Talmud Chacham, like they say, because again, this is part of the Matas Kohuna, the gifts that you give to a Kohen. It's one of the rights a Kohenim have, that they get these 24 gifts. So some opinions say that it should be a Talmud Chacham. If there's no Talmud Chacham, then you can give it to them lechatchila, and you don't have to wait for another, to do it on a condition without a bracha. You can do it right away with the kohenos and amadits. The parallel, some opinions say no, you should still wait until you get a kohen who's a Talmud Chacham. But the bottom line is, the halacha is you don't wait. So you don't need a kohen who's a Talmud Chacham. If you can get one, it's better, obviously. But otherwise, an Amoritz is not. So first of all, in the olden times, this concept was called Amoritz, who was illiterate. If you look in the Gemara Pesachim, in the 4th parak, there's like 2 blot Gemara, 2 pages of Gemara, that means 4 sides of Gemara, approximately, talking how bad an illiterate is. In the time of the Gemara, they basically disassociated themselves from the illiterates. It was awful the way the Gemara describes. Okay, and that was basically until the Baal Shem Tov. That's how people used to deal with the illiterates. But after the Baal Shem Tov, and today, especially in today's world, we don't have real Amoritz. We have people that didn't have an opportunity to learn. But today, a lot of people are more learned than a lot of people were in the olden times. They just from reading and from knowing. Those illiterates were barely able to daven even. They were barely able to read Hebrew and to daven. So that was a real din of an Amoritz. So today, Lepel, you do it with an Amoritz. Now what happens if you have a Kohen who's a relative? You have 2 options. You have a Kohen who's a relative, but he's not a scholar, or a Kohen who's not a relative, who is a scholar. So who do you go first to? You go to the family first. As in political.
Yeah.
Sholem is okay. Because the Gemara says because there's a pasuk that says "Umipsarcha al tasalim." You shouldn't forget about your own flesh. Now we learned already. There's a Mishnah Harius. The Mishnah says over there that when it speaks about order of greatness, Kohanim, Leviim, scholars, and they'll go through the whole procedure over there. So the Mishnah says that Talmud Chacham Mamzer, Talmud Chacham who's a Mamzer, not talking about what we call illegitimate child, he's taka Mamzer, comes before a Kohen Gadol who's an illiterate. In preference, giving out honors, okay? A Talmud Chacham was a Mamzer because in the Mishnah over there, halacha says today we don't do that. But in Mishnah times, there was a din that even though a guy was a Kohen, but if he was an illiterate, and it was a Talmud Chacham, you wouldn't give the first aliyah to the Kohen. You'd give it to the Talmud Chacham first. Because the Gemara says, the Mishnah says, Talmud Chacham, even if he's a Mamzer, comes before a Kohen Gadol who's an illiterate. And they learn it out from a pasuk. The pasuk says, Yikarahi mipninim. Simply means, Torah, Yikarahi, Torah is more precious than pearls. Pninim are like pearls. But the Gemara learns out, Yikarahi, Torah is more precious, mipninim, from a Kohen Gadol who goes lefnai v'lefnim. Even the one that goes into the Kodesh HaGadoshim on Yom Kippur. Yikarahi, Torah is more precious, mipninim, even from a Kohen Gadol who goes into the Holy of Holies, the pnim, all the way in, on Yom Kippur. So from there the Gemara learns out, 1 second. The Talmud Chacham, even if he's a Mamzer, comes before a Kohen Gadol as an Amoritz. But the Pearl poskim right that today that's not done because you know what that's going to do. You're an Amoritz, no, you're an Amoritz. And they're going to fight who's a bigger illiterate or who's a bigger scholar or the bigger thing. They tell, there was an interesting story. There was one, tell about the Shagasai, but whatever. They tell you about different stories. But the point of the story is as follows. There was a very sharp, young Talmud Chacham that was very brilliant, witty, sharp, and chutzpahdik. So he went once, he listened to an old great rabbi, or was a kohen, give a shir, give a lecture. And he started refuting him one thing. He didn't shut his mouth. He just, with his wit and his sharpness, he just started slugging him up. He's proving him that he doesn't know what he's talking about. So the old guy got upset with him. And there's a Gemara that says, "Kiven the chutz of kula hay shma mina mamzeru." A person with a lot of chutz. How did they know Yoshka was a mamzer? By the way, they saw that he had a lot of chutzpah. Kiven the chutzif is chutzpah. Kula hay shma mina mamzeru. So he says to this young guy that you're a mamzer. You have so much chutzpah. You have a mamzer. So he answered him back. But a Talmud Chacham who's a mamzer comes before a Kohen Gadol is an Amoritz. So you're an illiterate. I might be a mamzer, but I'm a Talmud Chacham. You're an illiterate. What?
Were there any historical case of somebody that was mamzer, but because of his progress in literacy, he was able to marry?
No, you can't undo.
No case.
You can't undo a mamzer. He's a mamzer, is obligated no mitzvahs to the Torah. He just can't marry. That's it. I mean, technically, you can marry a mamzeres, but you don't do that because then the kids are mamzerim. Technically, he can marry a convert.
Marry a convert?
Mamzer is allowed to marry a giyaris, but again, you don't allow it because if they have kids, they'll be mamzerim. All you're doing is multiplying mamzerim. But technically, I mean, I don't know. I don't even think it's done today. But technically, what happens if you have an older couple? They can't have kids. And he's a mamzer, and she's a giyaris. Technically, they would probably be allowed to get married, because they're not having kids anyway. But I don't think it's done today even.
Can a mamzer initiate a boy to convert her? And then
No. Okay.
Only in the times of the Gemara, Kesef Matar Mamzerim.
What?
Only in the times of the Gemara, they had a volume.
Kesef Matar Mamzerim is only at the time of the Gemara. Yeah. But even that was only not Chatchila the way of doing it. Okay, now last thing. What happens if somebody is a Kohen, Talmud Chacham, but he's rich? And there's another Kohen who's poor, but he's an illiterate. So who do you give it to? You give it to the poor guy, because he needs the money. Even though this other one is a Talmud Chacham, but he's rich. This guy's an illiterate, but he's poor. So there's a mitzvah of tzedakah. You have to give it to, he doesn't need the money, and this guy needs the money. So therefore, you would give it to the poor guy rather than the rich guy. But what happens, if you gave it by mistake to Ramar, he keeps it anyway. Okay. A Kohen who's a cholol, that means he's not a kosher Kohen, because he's an offshoot of a Kohen with a divorcee. He's not allowed to marry a divorcee. So their kid is not a Kohen. So you can't do Pidyon Haben with that kid because he's not a Kohen. Even his father's a Kohen, but he's not. So you wouldn't be allowed to do it.